What became of all those names our grandparents heard constantly in their daily lives? Names that once echoed through schoolrooms, offices, and family dinners have slowly disappeared from playgrounds and birth registers. Some carried an air of dignity, others sounded firm and resilient, and a few were simply wonderful in their charmingly old-fashioned way. If you enjoy reconnecting with the Britain many of us grew up surrounded by, remember to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. Now, let's gently open the family photo album, brush the dust from old parish records, and recall 20 British names that are rarely heard today. If you grew up when resilience was more important than comfort, this story will resonate with you. What follows isn't nostalgia, but a look at a childhood marked by hardship, where strength was learned from a young age and life offered no safety nets. Subscribe to our channel so we can continue bringing you this kind of content. Number 1. Doris. Once considered the height of sophistication between the world wars, Doris sparkled with glamour, helped in no small part by Hollywood icon Doris Day. For a time, it seemed to be everywhere across Britain, sounding fresh, optimistic, and full of promise. However, by the 1970s, the name quietly stepped aside, overtaken by smoother, more contemporary choices such as Julie and Karen. Today, Doris mostly survives on seaside postcards and in nostalgic television comedies, though every so often, a baby Doris appears, reminding us that even the most traditional names can return with renewed charm. Number 2. Gladys. You can almost imagine it spoken softly with a gentle Welsh lilt. Gladys was once just as familiar as Sarah or Emma, a name associated with kindness, neatness, and unquestioned respectability. Its popularity peaked in the early 1900s and remained steady for many years. Over time, however, it became linked in people's minds with strict aunts and practical shoes. Now, it feels charmingly vintage, like something that carries the faint scent of lavender and warm toffee. Number 3. Beryl. The name sounds like a precious stone, and in many ways, it was treated like one. Beryl shone during the 1930s and 40s, born by women who worked tirelessly, laughed openly, and understood their own value. It felt sturdy, practical, and unmistakably British, belonging to someone who always had mints in her handbag and a story ready to tell. While Beryl has vanished from modern birth records, it remains vivid in memory, capturing the spirit of post-war Britain in a single word. Number 4. Gertrude. Serious, powerful, and grounded, Gertrude carried real weight for Victorian parents. Its meaning, spear of strength, reflected the values of the era. Although affectionate nicknames like Gertie or Trudy softened its edge, the full name demanded respect. By the 1950s, it began to sound overly severe to modern ears and slipped from fashion. Still, there is something admirable about its bold presence, a name shaped for a world that prized character over trendiness. Number 5. Ethel. Once among the most common names in Britain, Ethel meant noble, and it truly sounded the part. For middle-class families in the early 20th century, it represented refinement, propriety, and elegance. As language and tastes changed, however, Ethel began to feel dated, more like a lace doily than a young debutante. By the 1950s, it disappeared from baby name lists. Today, it evokes pure nostalgia, calling to mind wooden radios, group sing-alongs, and black-and-white family photographs. Number 6. Hilda. Meaning battle, Hilda carried strength in every syllable. Popular in the early 20th century, particularly among working-class families, it brings images of women in headscarves managing households and remaining composed during air raids. Hilda was never flashy, but she was dependable, and perhaps that quiet reliability is exactly why the name deserves greater appreciation today. Number 7. Mildred. A beautiful contradiction, the name literally means gentle strength. Mildred was worn with pride by women across Britain and carried an air of quiet dignity. After the war, however, parents leaned toward lighter-sounding names, and Millie emerged as a name in its own right, leaving Mildred behind. Hearing it now feels comforting, like listening to a grandmother's voice on an old recording. Number 8. Phyllis. Graceful and tied to nature, Phyllis means foliage in Greek. For decades, it filled classroom registers from London to Leeds, offering a sound that was literary, refined, yet still homely. By the 1970s, however, it began to sound outdated, reminiscent of ration books and wartime austerity. Today, Phyllis survives mainly in stories and archives, a name that bloomed quietly before fading away. Number 9. Enid. Romantic, poetic, and distinctly British, Enid appeared in the works of Tennyson and gained fame through Enid Blyton. For a time, it was everywhere. After the 1960s, its clipped sound fell out of favor, replaced by softer alternatives. Even so, spoken today, Enid feels intelligent, brave, and endearingly old-fashioned. Number 10. Mabel. Meaning lovable, Mabel was immensely popular during Edwardian Britain. It sounded cheerful, polite, and sweet. Though it vanished around the middle of the century, unlike many forgotten names, Mabel has enjoyed a revival. In nurseries across the United Kingdom, you can now spot young Mabels taking their first steps, proving that some names truly do come full circle. Number 11. Norman. Solid and dependable, Norman literally means Northman, and it carried that sense of strength throughout the 20th century. It suited men who repaired things, served their country, or built lives from nothing. By the 1980s, the name faded, replaced by gentler-sounding choices, yet few names feel more reliably British. Number 12. Ernest. Once associated with dignity and gentle humor, thanks in part to Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, the name was proudly worn by explorers, writers, and gentlemen. Changing fashions eventually pushed it aside, and by the late 20th century, Ernest felt like a relic of grammar schools and stiff collars. Still, its sincerity remains timeless, suggesting someone who truly means what they say. Number 13. Clifford. Derived from a ford near a cliff, Clifford sounded rugged yet polished. It conveyed strength, dependability, and courtesy, the sort of name that greeted you with a firm handshake and remembered your birthday. While the shortened Cliff lingered a bit longer, the full name declined after the 1960s. Even so, it remains unmistakably British, perfectly suited to a tweed jacket. Number 14. Leslie. Beginning as a name of Scottish nobility, Leslie eventually spread across offices and streets throughout Britain. During the interwar years, it was adaptable, intelligent, and common. By the 1970s, shorter modern names like Lee and Neil took its place. Nevertheless, Leslie retains a warmth, bringing to mind the neighbor who always waved from the garden. Number 15. Wilfred. Friendly and gentle, often shortened to Wilf, Wilfred was a popular choice for boys born between the wars. It carries a quiet decency that many modern names lack. After disappearing for decades, it has begun to return, perhaps reflecting a renewed appreciation for names that sound genuinely kind. Number 16. Cecil. Elegant, traditional, and slightly aristocratic, Cecil belonged to poets, politicians, and men with book-lined libraries and fireplaces. By the mid-century, it felt too formal for a Britain embracing jeans and pop music. Today, it lingers on theater signs, park names, and among a few distinguished older relatives, calm and untroubled. Number 17. Horace. Scholarly and reserved, Horace suited a man who quoted Latin and never missed a train. It carried prestige in Victorian Britain but sounded excessively stiff by the 1960s. Now rare but remembered, nearly every family recalls a Horace, punctual, polite, and quietly confused by the modern world. Number 18. Edna. Simple, sturdy, and comforting, much like a good cup of tea. For decades, Edna was a familiar presence in British households. Softer names such as Emma and Anna eventually replaced it, yet Edna retains a gentle charm and steady strength, like someone who knows every neighbor on the street. Number 19. Bertha. Once meaning bright and famous, Bertha was loved by Victorian parents for its confidence. Over time, it became the subject of jokes, and by the 1970s, it had disappeared. now remembered mostly through affectionate humor or cartoon references. Its fall from grace was dramatic but unforgettable. Number 20. Gwendoline. One of the most romantic names Britain has produced, Gwendoline sounds soft, musical, and deeply Welsh. It feels at home in old love letters and handwritten wedding invitations. By the mid-20th century, shorter forms like Gwen and Wendy took over, pushing the full name into history. Still, saying it aloud today almost carries the echo of a harp and a hint of rose perfume. These were more than simple names. They were voices, values, and shared memories woven into everyday life. Each one reflects a Britain shaped by tea breaks, handwritten letters, and neighbors who truly knew one another by name. They remind us that names once carried expectations, manners, and even a sense of duty. Hearing them spoken aloud evokes kitchens warmed by kettles, front rooms with patterned wallpaper, and conversations that lingered because nobody was in a hurry to scroll away. These names belong to people who marked time differently, who measured life in seasons, routines, and familiar faces rather than trends. Each of these forgotten names also reflects a society that valued continuity. Children were often named after grandparents, aunts, or uncles, creating invisible threads between generations. Saying a name was a way of keeping someone present, even after they were gone. In that sense, the disappearance of these names feels like the fading of shared reference points, small anchors that once grounded families in a common past. There is also something deeply human in the way tastes change. What once sounded fresh and hopeful slowly becomes old-fashioned, then eventually curious, and sometimes even endearing again. Names follow the same cycle as furniture, clothing, and music. They fall out of favor not because they lose meaning, but because the world around them shifts, searching for new sounds to express new identities. Yet when these names resurface, they do so with a different energy. No longer weighed down by expectation, they return as choices made with affection and intention. A revived name is rarely accidental. It is chosen because it feels warm, distinctive, and connected to something real in a world that often feels fleeting. In remembering them, we are not just listing words from a registry. We are acknowledging the lives lived under those names, the ordinary heroism of people who worked, loved, worried, laughed, and endured. Their names may no longer fill classrooms, but their echoes remain, quietly shaping the culture that followed. Perhaps that is why these names still resonate. They remind us that behind every name is a story, and behind every story is a version of Britain that helped shape who we are today. A Britain that may have changed, but has never truly disappeared. They linger in the background of our collective memory, surfacing in old address books, fading photographs, and inscriptions on gravestones weathered by time. These names belong to an era when identity felt slower and more rooted, when a name was not chosen to stand out online but to fit comfortably into a family, a street, and a lifetime. Saying them now feels like opening a drawer that has not been touched in decades. There is a quiet dignity to these forgotten names because they were carried by people who rarely expected to be extraordinary, yet were exactly that in small, enduring ways. They raised families through uncertainty, worked jobs that demanded resilience, and found joy in modest routines. Their names were spoken daily with familiarity, never needing to be explained or defended, simply accepted as part of the social fabric. As generations moved on, these names gradually slipped out of everyday speech. Not through any single decision, but through countless small choices made by parents looking forward rather than back. New sounds felt more hopeful, more modern, better suited to a changing world. And so the old names rested quietly, not rejected, just set aside. Still, they carry emotional weight. When we hear them now, they feel textured, almost tangible, as if they hold traces of voices, accents, and expressions that no longer dominate public life. They conjure memories of handwritten notes, careful manners, and conversations that unfolded without urgency. In a sense, they remind us of how language itself once moved more slowly. There is comfort in that slowness. These names feel anchored, resistant to the constant reinvention that defines the present. They suggest permanence in a time when so much feels temporary. Perhaps that is why they stir nostalgia even in those who never knew anyone who bore them personally. They represent stability, familiarity, and a shared cultural rhythm. Looking back, it becomes clear that names are more than labels. They are cultural artifacts, shaped by history, class, region, and values. When certain names disappear, they take with them subtle ways of seeing the world. When we remember them, we recover fragments of that perspective, however briefly. And maybe that is the quiet power of revisiting them now. Not to revive them en masse, or to turn them into trends, but to acknowledge their place in the story. They remind us that the present is built on layers of lived experience, much of it carried invisibly through ordinary names spoken in ordinary homes. In the end, these names endure not because they are fashionable again, but because they still feel human. They echo with warmth, resilience, and familiarity. They belong to a Britain that may feel distant, yet continues to influence how we speak, how we remember, and how we understand where we came from. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who has experienced it, or with someone who hasn't. Understanding the origins of that resilience helps connect generations shaped by very different worlds. Subscribe so we can continue bringing you more content like this. See you next time.